He is best known as the founder and chairman of Polygon, a family of companies that has produced more than 34,000 homes in the Metro Vancouver area since 1980, and for the art gallery in Whistler that bears his name. Now, 2 years after penning the memoir One Man in His Own Time, he's out with a coffee table book to explain how, over 7 decades, he's acquired a distinguished and diverse collection of Canadian and international art, including the largest private collection of Emily Carr artwork in the country. Here to talk about Pictures on the Wall, Building a Canadian Art Collection, is the entrepreneur and philanthropist, Michael Audain. What made you write the book, and why now?
Well, I think collectors, and I guess I've been a collector for a lot of my life, always have a desire to share their collections with other people instead of, say, hoarding it to themselves. They want to share it. It doesn't matter if people collect cars or they collect teacups, or in my case, I've been collecting art. And I thought the book is a good way of sharing it. Initially we built a museum up in Whistler, an art museum, and that's worked very well. But I think in order to share it with a greater number of people across the country, I thought that we'd do a book.
Now, in the book, you admit I'm a home builder, not an artist, and that being a collector of art is secondary to being a lover of art. Why is it important to you to make those distinctions?
Well, I think that I do have a passion for art, but I don't claim to have any particular expertise in it. You know the old saying, I know what I like, or I like what I know, and that's the same for me. But I have, during the course of my life, of course, tried to learn more about the artists whose work I've collected, and also I dare say I've seen an awful lot of art in my life. I've visited probably over 100 art museums in different countries, and tried to develop my eye and my taste. But very fortunately, we have some of the best art in the world being made right here in British Columbia.
Now, you make the point as well that collecting art is usually thought of as something that only wealthy people can do. Yet you argue one of the most common misconceptions about art collection is that you need a lot of money to do it. And when you started out, that wasn't the case.
Why, I started early in my 20s. In fact, when I was still a student, and for many years I had a limit of $50 that I could spend on a painting, and then that went to $100. And a few years later, it skipped quite a bit and became much more substantial. But I think it is possible with modest means to still collect art, and with some wonderful examples of major collectors who through judicious selection and they have been able to build substantial collections. Perhaps they have bought artwork that interested them when they were very young.
Is part of the reason for the book to get other people to start collecting, folks who aren't necessarily wealthy, to inspire them as well?
I think it is because, but that's, and I have notes in the back of the book addressed to people who may be thinking about collecting art. Really, just how I did it, but beyond that, I wanted to bring the Canadian public to attention to some of the very wonderful art that it's been our privilege to collect.
Would you have any opinions on what, say, makes a good collector versus a bad collector of art?
I think a good collector is someone who has puts a lot of time into it. In other words, you need to see an awful lot of art before you figure what really works for you and for your family, and not just go on other people's opinion. So I think that's the really the first ingredient, and then you need to, once you focus on an artist, you need to decide what period you like from best from that artist, and just develop your taste over time.
Now, the bulk of your collection falls into three definable areas: art from BC, Mexico, and Quebec. Yet it's fair to say the heart of the collection is made up of works by Emily Carr. In fact, the largest collection of her artwork in private hands. I know this is a sweeping question because I've read the book, but what is it about Emily Carr that continues to resonate with you?
Well, I think growing up mostly on the West Coast, I grew up in my early days around Victoria. Um, I was familiar with the landscape that Emily Carr portrayed, and I would spend time in the deep dark forests that interested her. I saw the tremendous, fabulous skies over the Strait of Georgia, and I was just familiar with the background of Emily Carr, and of course, in her early work, where she particularly spends time depicting the First Nations art up and down the coast. That was also another great interest of mine.
It's interesting how you lay out in the book that you didn't like Carr at first, and your father and stepmother were quite open about their disdain. There's a line in the book where you quote your father as saying that he called her that batty old woman who used to walk around town pushing a monkey and a dog in a baby's pram, and your stepmother said that Carr had painted with all the wrong colors. So, what made you fall in love with her work ultimately?
Well, I have to confess that Emily Carr's work first scared me. I saw it when I was about 10 years old on a Saturday morning lecture in the Provincial Museum. And we were all sitting in the dark, and then they projected these slides onto the screen, and they were really scary. I didn't know just what was there. Was she? It was as I mentioned before, some of her great work is the very dense forest, and I thought some of the trees look like they could be the ghost of First Nations people, this and that, and it was very scary for me. And it wasn't till I was in my early 20s and I'd already made the rounds of some of the important art museums in Europe and in New York. But I came to the decision, yes, that woman was a really important artist, and so I guess I educated my eye, and my taste changed. And today, I think Emily Carr is definitely one of the most important artists of the 20th century. I think we know that in Canada, but she's not known well enough internationally, and I hope that will be fixed before too long.
You've made it your mission to see the validation of Emily Carr's contribution to art far beyond the country of her birth. How confident are you of this happening?
Oh, I've had discussions with the directors of some of the top museums in New York. There is interest. One museum, the Museum of Modern Art, actually sent a curator out, and I showed her the curator, Emily Carr's work, and in the Vancouver Art Gallery, which probably has the best collection. And I also took her around some of the locales on Vancouver Island where Emily Carr worked. And I think they considered it, but at the time they told me that they only showed art that they had in their collection, and they didn't have any at the time. They invited me to donate, but I'd already donated our collection to the Audain Art Museum in Whistler.
Now, before I let you go, I wanted to ask you about the Andy Warhol piece that was once in your collection, Queen Elizabeth II of the United Kingdom, 1985. How did this one come into your possession?
Well, it was pretty simple. I was driving down Granville Street one morning, and I saw it in the window of an art gallery called the Equinox, which at the time had they were located on Granville Street. So I just went in to inquire if it was for sale, and I was fortunate enough to buy it at the time. That work, by the way, is now in the Royal Collection. So in
Uh,
in in either Buckingham Palace or Windsor, wherever they keep their works.
now, given the rest of your collection, and Andy Warhol seems like an unusual selection, an outlier. Was acquiring this more about the subject than the artist himself?
Yeah, I think I was fascinated too with Andy Warhol. I lived in New York for a while in the '60s when Andy Warhol was working or was a celebrity. I hung out at one of the bars that he would occasionally drink in the evening, and it was a great opportunity to be able to acquire an Andy Warhol painting. And it was a painting, not a poster, but I was able to acquire it at what today would seem a very, very reasonable price compared to what his work is selling on the international market today.
What made you part with it ultimately?
Well, I realized that uh, my interest was really the art of this province, the art of Quebec, which I'm interested in, and also the art of Mexico. And I didn't really think it fitted that well in the collection. So I was able to use some of the handsome proceeds from the sale of it to acquire more art related to, say, British Columbia.
Now, you mentioned in the book that it's now in the royal collection. Uh,
Yes.
do you know who in the royal family happens to own it, or was that kept secret from you?
No, I think it's there is a royal collection, and I'm told that's where it ended up. That's all I know. Um, I had an opportunity once to go through the art in Buckingham Palace, and amazing works there, Van Dyck's and all the great Dutch paintings, French Impressionists, everything else. I didn't happen to see the Andy Warhol that day, but I think I'm glad that it was acquired by the Royal Collection, because it's Andy Warhol, of course, internationally is one of the great towering artists of the 20th century.
What do you hope people get out of the book ultimately?
Well, I hope they start to appreciate more how important the art of our, particularly of British Columbia, is. People have been making very sophisticated art here for thousands of years. I'm referring to the pre-European period, and so that is the artwork is just fabulous there, ranging from the miniature, say, jewelry, to the monumental, say, the totem poles, and then since then, artists from other places, mainly across Canada, have been attracted to Vancouver. We've had a very good art school here, so that's attracted a lot of young people. And I think we have a modest climate, modest in terms of the extremes of Canada. So I think that the visual arts is really probably our most important art form in this this province, I dare say.
Now, off the top, I mentioned you're a home builder, but you're also a collector of art. A book like this kind of seems like a legacy project. What do you hope to be remembered for more, for building homes or for collecting and promoting art?
I haven't really thought about that, but you know, I hope that the homes that we build will last a great many years. I hope so, but I know that the artworks that we have collected, I know those works will last, and I think there's a Latin saying, "Vita brevis, ars longer." Life is short, but our art is long. Our art goes on, and it's been my privilege to lived with some very important art, and that's made my life a lot richer. And I'm sure it does other people in our province and country who have the opportunity to collect the tremendous, the wonderful art that's being created today.
The name of the book is Pictures on the Wall, Building a Canadian Art Collection. It's published by Douglas and McIntyre. My thanks to author Michael Audain.
Thank you very much.